I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. In true crime and in law, wet dream evidence is having video footage of the entire incident. And we've just seen something like that in a Clark County courtroom in Nevada, America, where a man was denied probation and then promptly attacked the judge. All of that was captured on camera. I'll put a link to that in the description. But that is exactly what we have in this case, a neighbor's camera positioned perfectly, plumb in front of the whole scene, which raises an interesting hypothetical. If Rohan knew he was on camera, if he knew the incident was being recorded, would he have acted any differently? And in this analysis, we're going to deal with this whole issue from Rohan's own words. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. I will be doing an interesting video on the JonBenet Ramsey case a little bit later today, where we'll be looking at the neglect narrative, so look out for that. If you're enjoying this analysis, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. Now, besides the camera, there are apparently also two witnesses who saw the tragedy unfold and rushed to Melissa's aid. Now, it's unclear whether those witnesses were behind the direction of travel, so it's possible, I guess, that Rohan didn't see them. But in another sense, it's quite hard to believe that. And so if you're asking the question, if he knew he was on camera, would he have acted differently? Well, if he knew there were two witnesses there, would he have acted differently? It's also possible that Melissa's actions were unexpected and spontaneous, perhaps even impulsive, and that Rohan couldn't have predicted that she was about to do that. It's all very difficult to speculate without seeing the video. The other thing is, it's not clear who called 000. Obviously, if Rohan didn't call 000, then that's kind of aggravating against him, because whoever called 000 is trying to render aid to Melissa. Something else that I find interesting is Rohan himself hasn't put up a statement on his own Instagram basically saying he's sorry or whatever. And you saw something like that from Colin Strickland, a statement on Instagram. So one aspect an investigation might want to ascertain is possible intent. This is a broad question which would involve also looking at the marriage of the young couple, looking at their phones and browser histories, trying to ascertain if there was anything brewing behind the scenes, some kind of dynamic that may have played into this. Now, in a previous analysis, I mentioned an incident where ROHAN Dennis abruptly walked out of the tour. What's interesting is Rohan was later fired by his team, and he apparently sued them for wrongful dismissal. What that suggests is that despite doing what he did, it seems as though he expected to be allowed to continue riding for the team. Put another way, he seemed to think he could do something like that and get away with it. Now, this is completely different to Rohan quitting the tour and his team, obviously. It does suggest someone who acts rashly without fully appreciating the consequences. So if that's the case, let's try and take that a little bit further. Is there any reinforcing evidence for this supposition? Cycling News, and I'll put a link to this in the description, provides a fascinating in-depth analysis of this incident at the time in real time. And through this, we kind of get a sense of who Rohan Dennis really is. And we also get a sense of who he is through his own words. So, quoting from the article, for those in the know and certainly those in the peloton, Dennis's departure from the race at such a critical time was not the major surprise that it was first made out to be. According to several sources in and around the team, the Australian has been at war with the management since the beginning of the year over equipment and clothing. Now, if you think about it, that's quite a, I don't know, I kind of feel like it's quite a small thing to be at war with. I know he was not happy with the time trial skin suits, and I think he wasn't very happy with the time trial bars. And so the obvious question to ask is, could he have been at war with the management in terms of his own family over who knows what, clothing, dishes that weren't washed, who knows. In 2019, he was unhappy with clothing. In terms of the equipment, we've got quite a bit of information. Again, quoting from the article, impressed with the custom handlebars used by time trial specialist and new hour record holder Victor Campanitz. The Australian asked for the same for his own time trial machine earlier this year. You kind of get almost a childish sense of almost like one little boy looking at someone else's toy and saying, I want something like that. And obviously in professional cycling, equipment does matter. And I mean, I was someone caught up in that whole thing myself. But basically see someone else with a particular accessory and he wants the same thing. And so he was initially told that the Lotto Soudal setup was not in line with the equipment on offer from Bahrain Merida's sponsors, in this case Vision, the suppliers of these aero bars. According to a source within the team, Dennis threatened to pull out of a planned media event if the request for the bars wasn't met. I don't know, you just kind of get a sense of someone who's very, almost like a spoiled child, who really feels like, if I don't get my way, I can do anything. I can be a drama queen. It's difficult not to imagine if Rohan was in the habit of creating drama, of kind of pushing his weight around, of being a big deal, of threatening to pull out of things, that his exit out of the family home so close to New Year's Eve wasn't a similar kind of thing. And I guess the investigation is going to be looking at that. The amazing thing with stage 12 of the Tour de France was that it wasn't an isolated moment of madness. Dennis had done something similar in April of the same year. In the same article they say, quote, as well as equipment, the team and Dennis have clashed over race schedules. In April, after the team changed his plan from 2 races in the Ardennes, Dennis raced 2 races at the Tour of Basque Country, before surprising the team by not starting the 3rd stage. According to sources at the team, Dennis felt he had raced his schedule 2 days in April and had therefore fulfilled his contractual obligations. According to sources, Dennis felt that 2 days at the Ardennes equaled 2 days in the Basque Country and that there was no need to carry on with the rest of the race. The team management were left scratching their heads when the world time trial champion packed his bags and duly left the race. Feels very much like a prima donna. On Friday, Gazzetta dello Sport also reported that Dennis had a heated argument with a teammate at a race this spring that almost turned physical. So can you see it's not an isolated incident, it's one thing after another. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The same article describes Dennis as on the far side of demanding, as well as challenging to work with. Although the word difficult isn't used, clearly that's what they're angling at. Now get this. Again, quoting from the article. In an interview with Pro Cycling Magazine in 2018, Dennis gave a fascinating insight into how his mind worked. When asked directly about his prickly nature, he added, what I've found is that it's not so much the big things that annoy me, because they're out of my control. They're completely out of my control. It's the things that are within my control, the things that could have been avoided, which I've either brought up as an issue and it hasn't been addressed or has been ignored. And then it happens again and again. And then it's like, why isn't anyone listening to me? What does it take? And you almost get the feeling that he may have said this in his own marriage. Why isn't anyone listening to me? What does it take to get you to listen to me? Would he have said something like this to his own wife? Going back to the article, and that's where it's my delivery of telling someone something. Sometimes they probably think he's attacking me, he's having a crack at me, and they don't actually listen. They've just gone, he's angry, I'm not going to listen. So in other words, he doesn't like being dismissed. And then he says, whereas slowly I'm getting to the point where I'm articulating that message a little better. It's getting through more often. So what he's really saying is, he needs to say in clearer language what his demands are, and then maybe he will then have his demands met completely and entirely. He added, Manuel Quinzato, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, he retired at the end of the 2017 season, once said to me, "Be like water." I was like, "Take your Buddhist crap somewhere else." And he was, "No, seriously, in the peloton, be like water. If something gets in front of you, just flow around it." That makes sense, and I understand where he's coming from, but it's just hard for me to always do it. I'm just not that kind of person who thinks, "Oh well, I'll just go around it." I want to go through it. I want to smash that rock out of the way so that I can take the fastest possible route. And that's just the way I think some of us are. Obviously, I have to deal with what I've forged for myself. And so far, I've been pretty good at trying to keep it behind closed doors. End quote. Well, enough said. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.